Hello, my name is Alexandra. Welcome to my lesson. Today we're going to be talking about pianist as a profession. Believe it or not, this is not a very old profession because the piano as we know it today was invented in 1700s by Italian inventor Bartolomeo Cristofori, and it took another almost 100 years for this profession to fully form. In this video I'm going to be sharing with you some stories about the early stage of this newly formed profession, and we're also going to be talking about technique, and I'll share with you a simple exercises that I give to my students when they a little bit bored to play simple scales. I think those exercises would be suitable for late elementary and early intermediate level. So the modern piano's grandparents were harpsichord and clavichord. They were actually quite different instruments from what we have today, because on those instruments, on clavichord and harpsichord, you really had very little control of your sound. You could not play very loud and very soft, so actually the sound was kind of consistent throughout your playing, and there was no pedal, so you could not sustain the sound. So it was quite different. And if you look into the musical life of 1700s, if you were to call a musician, right, if your profession is a musician, you had to be able, number one, compose, number two, improvise, and number three, to perform on preferably multiple instruments. So there were really no people who say, okay, I'm the keyboard playing, I can only play harpsichord, and this is what I do, this is my profession. There was no such thing. So this newly invented piano, pianoforte, how people called piano means soft in Italian language, forte means loud, so the instrument that can play loud and soft. So when they first were invented, it's actually, they were not quite the same as the instrument that I have today in front of me. They were really fragile. So for example, the strings could be easily broken if you play too loud and not too careful, and so forth. And there was really not that many people who say, okay, now from now on this is going to be my instrument, I'm going to dedicate my life to it, and I'm going to just practice and play concerts and so forth. So still the profession of the pianist did not exist, and one of the first pianists in a sense of a person who played this instrument and give a piano recital actually was Ludwig van Beethoven. So he was the one who started to give those first piano recitals in the salons of Vienna, and it was actually quite a success because he was so different from the Viennese pianists that they regularly had, because those pianists were very polished, they couldn't play wrong note. Actually, it reminds me the world that we live today, because right now it's expected, you are just expected to play very well, technically perfect, and without any wrong notes and so forth. But Beethoven was very different in his style of playing this newly invented instrument, because his playing was very wild, was very passionate, and he was the one who would break the instrument during the recitals because it just could not really handle his force. So it was a really big show when he would, for example, break a piano, and then there was another instrument that would be coming on the stage, and he would continue to play. So he was very different. However, when this interest of becoming a pianist full-time started to rise more and more in the society, Beethoven was the one who made a lot of fun of people like this. He would say, oh, so you're a piano player and you cannot even compose and you cannot even improvise, and so you're gonna dedicate your life to just play something that other people wrote? That's ridiculous. So he was actually very furious about this whole idea. So this interest of becoming pianist full-time grew stronger and stronger no matter what. It was just an inevitable process because the instruments also became better and better, and then at some point it was just really a gorgeous instrument, and it really had those abilities that the whole orchestra can have, right? It really was a mini orchestra right in front of you. So it really became crucial to have a proper training, right? If you want to become a pianist, you have to know, how to play the instrument, and what is the proper technique, and how do I develop my technique, and so forth. And also something we have to keep in mind that before, the tradition of learning how to play keyboard instrument were actually kept within the household. So your first teacher would probably be your mom, or your dad, or somebody from the family. So it was really just kind of a family affair, and there were not professional teachers back then who could actually say, okay, if you know, come to me once a week or twice a week, most likely more than once a week, and I will make you a good pianist. No, it was just a part of family and home-based education. So one of the most famous first piano pedagogues was Czerny. So Czerny actually dedicated his whole life to raising a professional pianist, right? If you want to study with Czerny, you're probably going to have an amazing technique, great foundation, and so forth, and so you actually can become a professional pianist. And interestingly enough, Czerny was a student of Ludwig van Beethoven, and it's actually quite an interesting story how two of them met. So according to the tradition that I mentioned earlier, Czerny's first teacher was his father. But when Karl was about 8 to 9 years old, the father thought, okay, I cannot teach you anymore, you're quite talented and you really need to study with somebody else. And their big dream was that the teacher of young Karl would be Ludwig van Beethoven. Beethoven was #1 star during this time in Vienna, and in fact Vienna was a musical capital of the world. So a father and the son was thinking for a while, how do they actually convince Beethoven to become Karl's teacher? And they came up with an interesting plan. So Karl's dad said, okay, how about you going to learn a really difficult piece, and let's just make you learn piano concerto. So we're gonna have a big concert, you will play with the orchestra, and we will invite Maestro Beethoven, and then we'll humbly ask him to become your teacher. What do you think? And the Karl said, okay, this is a great idea, let's do this. So actually he worked so hard, hours and hours of practice, so many months of preparation, and finally the concerto was learned. So finally the day of the performance came, and Karl was very excited to perform. He was in a great shape, the music was learned just perfectly, and according to their plan, the Beethoven was sitting in the audience. So when the concert was finished, the father and the son were just getting ready to talk to Maestro Beethoven and just beg him to accept Karl as a student. But something quite interesting happened. Beethoven was so impressed with the playing of the young pianist that he actually came up to Karl himself and said to Karl's father, your son has a great talent and I will be his teacher. So I don't care who you study with, I'm going to teach you from now on. So I'm going to be your teacher. Come to my apartment twice a week and we will just go from there. So Czerny and his father were just in heavens. Their dream came true, and Karl started to come to Beethoven's apartment twice a week and study with this famous master. But after a few lessons with Beethoven, Karl was quite disappointed. And guess why? Because Beethoven made him play only scales for a while. Just scales going up and down in all 24 keys. And it actually were going on for a very long time, for weeks, if not months. And at some point, Karl was so depressed already because he just wanted to study the new repertoire with Beethoven, and he wanted him to share some kind of, wisdom of this great maestro. But Beethoven just, okay, scales again, scales again. And then at some point, Karl begged him, Maestro, why do you ask me to play only scales? I can't do this anymore. Can you just give me a piece of music? And then Beethoven started to talk to Karl about the importance of the proper technique, the hand position, and especially the position of the thumb. And I think it really made such a huge impact on Karl that he literally dedicated his life to writing the exercises for students. And today at the end of this video, I'm actually going to share some links with you of the Czerny system. So he really designed a system that if you follow, like if you do all this exercise, it's impossible to do all because there are thousands of them. But if you just kind of go from stage to stage from something more simple to the next level and so forth. At the end, you should be able to have very decent technique, guaranteed. So this assignment I recently gave to my students, and I called it Not So Boring Scales. Of course, every piano student learn how to play scales. We learn going up and down, doing contrary motion, grand pattern and so forth. But after a while, it might seem a little bit boring. So here, I'll just share some very simple ideas, but so far my kids really liked it. So the first exercise is called Three Musketeers. A lot of my students didn't know who Musketeers were, so we had a little discussion about that, but that's fine. So we're going to play a scale in triplets, in triplet rhythm. So I suggest that you first let your student learn those in C major, and then you can explore with a little bit more advanced keys. So here's the Three Musketeers. You'll just play scale in triplet. And going back and forth. Easy. Second exercise I called Snail and Gazelle. So obviously the two hands will be playing in a different speeds. So the snail is for the hand that will play slowly. It will play in 8 notes, and the gazelle will be the hand that's playing 16ths. So this is how it looks. And then of course you can switch hands. Then left hand will be a gazelle, and then right hand is a snail. Number 3, Hedgehog and a Kitten. And that's why I said that this is actually suitable for elementary and intermediate level, but even if you want to give it to a little bit older kids, maybe you can just should omit some of those titles because they're just a little bit childish, I realize, but the kids like it. So play one hand staccato, which is a hedgehog, and then another hand will be a kitten, legato. And then you switch in hands. Exercise number 4. Let your students play scale in thirds. I call it hard elements. It's not very hard, but for kids it might be a little bit hard to play double notes. But to learn this fingering, when you have to use different combinations to go up and down, it might be a little bit difficult for some students. So let's meet them where they are and just offer them one combination of finger. For example, fingers 3-5, right? And just go over it in scale. And challenge them to play everything very clearly, going up and down. Second combination will be 2-4. And then last one is 1-3. And then you can actually mix them, right? So one hand plays 2 and 4, another hand plays 1 and 3, and so forth. So that will help them to actually get a little bit stronger fingers when they play double notes. Next exercise is Unstoppable Train. So here we will need a minor scale, and we will play natural, harmonic, and melodic minor all in one go, non-stop. For example, let's do A minor. Right? It's actually fun. Next exercise is called thumb solo. Thumb finger is such an important, it's a crucial finger. It's a really secret of the speed, right, of virtuosity. So it's very important to have a proper position, which is light and tall. So just invite your students to play chromatic scale, which is quite easy, only with the thumb. I'll show with my left hand. Light, right, you can just do a little bit of crescendo and diminuendo just to have a little bit more variety in the sound, but actually it's very useful. I know it might seem a little bit boring, but it really will make them pay attention and just kind of bring that awareness of the thumb position, and that finger, trust me, is so crucial. Next exercise, Prokofiev scale. So as some of you know, Prokofiev was a modern composer who actually explored different traditions, different ways of composing music and playing, but his style was absolutely unique. So he actually liked to play scales with his own fingering, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just forget about remembering about this specific note for finger 4. So it's, oh, everything is done with this fingering. It's fun, and it's easy to play in C major, but it will not be so easy in F sharp major. So as I said, let the students learn this in a simple key and then progress. It will be very fun and useful. And last but not least, we're going to learn something from American jazz musician Lennie Tristano. When he switched to just teaching jazz to pianist, he was actually very systematic with his approach. It was, very good structure, and he paid a lot of attention to a proper technique. So there's actually a huge list of fingering that he suggested to his students to try when they're working on the scales, but I only offer 2 of his fingering for the students. Is to play a scale with only fingers 1 and 2 and 4 and 5. For example, 1, 2. It's fun, and again brings that very important awareness of finger 1 position. And then 4 and 5. This is more difficult. The challenge here, especially when you do 4 and 5, which is not a perfect combination, but very important combination for a pianist, is to have a good sound, right, as this. So it shouldn't really seem like a struggle. It should seem like a musical line. So this is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be happy to share with you those exercises that I designed for my students. Please feel free and use them in your studios. I hope they will be useful. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.